Adventures to Go follows the escapades of Finn, a young man set on making a living by defeating and harvesting monsters that occupy the kingdom. Instead of braving the wild and risk getting killed, Finn instead travels to the local establishment known as Adventures to Go, which essentially provides a simulated training ground for those looking to hone their skills. From here, he instructs the simulation to produce monsters that can be harvested, allowing him to achieve his goals in a much safer environment. As you would expect with most RPGs, there is a huge array of weapons and spells at your disposal, allowing you to dispatch your enemies in style within each battle. The action takes place on a grid, allowing you to move, use items and attacks in a turn-based fashion, each action using points which can be carried over to your next turn, allowing you to plan ahead and use this to your advantage. Visually, the game presents a very unique art style, with each character, monster and environment possessing a vibrancy that permeates throughout the experience. Echochrome introduces us to a pretty unique premise. As the player, you control the camera and manipulate the world to guide a figure in order to collect shadows that will result in the end of each stage. By altering the view of the camera, the various platforms that make up the level can be connected by simply making them look like they are due to the perspective of the viewpoint. Despite its incredibly simple premise and gameplay, Echochrome provides a surprising amount of difficulty to the player through the use of some imaginative level design that keeps the experience fresh as you make your way through it. Adding to the game's replay value is a well thought out and implemented level design mode known as Canvas that sees you creating your own stages and gives you access to a huge array of options, resulting in an endless supply of levels to conquer. Visually, everything is presented in a simple manner, with the action being projected onto a white background, which can at times quite honestly become tiring on your eyes, so it's a good idea to head into the options where they can be changed to a more subtle grey colour. This can be especially useful when playing in a dim lit environment. If you've never played Echochrome, it is a really unique experience that deserves a playthrough. Shinobido Tales of the Ninja is essentially a collection of missions. Each type offers various objectives that take advantage of the mechanics that are in place, that will see the player sneaking about each environment and utilizing a huge array of weapons and items that will aid you across the course of the game. Each mission starts with predetermined weapons and items that vaguely outline the strategies the player will need to deploy in order to complete the level. For example, in some missions you will have the ability to use your grappling hook, resulting in a greater emphasis on stealth. These limitations really add to the difficulty of each mission and forces the player to adapt on the fly. At the end of each mission, you are rewarded experience points, which eventually unlock higher amounts of damage and health, as well as new moves and a surprisingly generous amount of characters. Although sparse on story content, if you're looking for a rewarding gameplay experience, Shinobido on the PSP offers up something that should not be missed. The gameplay premise of Cube is incredibly simple. As the player, you are tasked with essentially getting from point A to point B, but what really adds to the experience is the inclusion of puzzle elements that manage to mix up the gameplay into something truly memorable. Overcoming these puzzles sees the player pushing specific blocks in a particular way to fill in gaps in the course or to find switches that upon being pressed will manipulate the playing field. Now, Cube possesses a huge amount of variety in its level design, and with over 100 stages included, there is a generous amount of replay value as you make your way through trying to best each stage in order to achieve a medal. The first thing that stands out when playing the game is the vibrant monochrome visuals that at first can be off-putting to many players, but Cube manages to carve out a distinct art style that creates something visually pleasing, but admittedly it may not appeal to everyone. If you can look past the game's shortcomings in presentation, what lies beneath is an addictive experience that caters to players looking for a fresh take on the puzzle formula. Set in a world left in ruin due to a civilization known as the Ancients, whose technology advanced way beyond anything that came before, including the power to revive the dead through the use of Atomi gems. Ender Serenity depicts the events of an organization known as the Underworld, who are hell-bent on collecting this ancient technology. The player takes control of Ute, who is joined by Emil, on their quest to stop the Underworld's plans of reactivating this technology. Gameplay-wise, Ender Serenity is a turn-based RPG in nature that relies on the regular tropes of the genre, such as various weapons and skills being granted to each character throughout the course of the game, but what really sets it apart from its contemporaries is its loving attention to detail. This is seriously one of the best RPGs on the PSP. I don't want to go too much into it because I'm afraid I might spoil the experience for you, but if you're a fan of the genre, there is plenty on offer here that warrants a purchase. Brave Story New Traveler follows the adventures of a young boy known as Tatsuya, who embarks on a quest to save his friend Miki, who has unfortunately been struck by a terrible illness. A celestial voice speaks to him and encourages him to enter the land of vision in order to collect 5 gemstones that will result in the goddess granting him his wish. Now, Brave Story is a truly classic RPG in every sense of the word. Battles take on the form of a turn-based system with the ability of having up to 3 unique characters in your party at one time. But what makes the action stand out is the inclusion of a mechanic known as the Unity system. It rewards characters in your party who consistently battle together, forming bonds over the course of the game, which results in being able to unleash devastating attacks. It's really similar to the team system that was present in Chrono Trigger and adds a lot to the gameplay. Visually, Brave Story is one of the most impressive experiences available on the PSP. Animations during battle are truly spectacular, as well as the intricate detail that makes up each character and environment, which helps lend a real sense of quality to the overall adventure. Metal Gear Acid is a huge departure from what we've come to know and love from the Metal Gear series, slicing together the renowned stealth gameplay with a turn-based strategy mechanic that relies on the use of in-game cards in the furthest thing from the adventures of the series past. Because of this, a lot of people passed this game off and never really gave it a chance. The action sees you alternating rounds with the enemy, moving Snake across the map via the use of cards, which are randomly dealt at the beginning of each game. The amount of cards on offer is huge, ranging from basic movements to engaging enemies, and staples of the series such as knocking on walls to distract guards, and the trusty cardboard box is present as well. Each card is set into 3 distinct categories, those being common, rare and ultra rare, and as you would expect, as the rarity of the card increases, so does its power. But what really stands out about the experience is the presentation of Metal Gear Acid. It is truly remarkable, with PlayStation 2 levels of detail and standout character designs. The sense of life brought to the on-screen action is something every PSP owner should experience. Patchwork Heroes puts you into the shoes of carpenters who have decided to overcome the advance of gigantic warships threatening their freedom. They decide to tear them down using their skills by sawing them into pieces. Okay, the premise isn't that inspiring, but where Patchwork Heroes excels is with its gameplay that offers a completely fresh experience that takes advantage of the unique art style and world it is set in. The gameplay is incredibly simple, basically consisting of the D-pad and one button to saw, but what adds to the intensity of the experience is the inclusion of a timer that presents the player with how long they have left until the attacking ships reach the city. This aspect of the gameplay lends a real sense of urgency to the proceedings, and with the inclusion of power-ups that manage to further the frantic action, Patchwork Heroes is a really diverse experience that deserves a place in your library. Wild Arms is a visually stunning strategic RPG that plunges the player into the lives of some incredibly vibrant characters, set across a journey that spans an entire kingdom known as Elysius, with the objective being to obtain a sword which has the power to lift the world from ruin. If you're a passing fan of the strategic RPG genre, you can already know what to expect from the battle system. Standard attacks and spells are in place, as well as a job system that really fleshes out the progression of each character, and with more than 16 available, there is bound to be one that suits your style of play. But what makes Wild Arms XF unique has to be the way in which the player is allowed to experiment within battle. There is no penalty for messing up. For instance, losing your money or having to start back at a town to restock, which is a welcome change to the usual formula, allowing the player to make mistakes and to finally find a way that suits them best to play. Essentially a port of the PlayStation 2 classic, Shadow of Destiny was released in 2010, which follows the protagonist through a time-bending adventure set across various eras, ranging from the distant future all the way into the past. The objective of the game is to essentially prevent the death of the main character, who at the start of the experience dies and enters Purgatory, where he is handed a device known as the Z-Pad, which grants him the ability to travel through time. Gameplay-wise, it's a pretty simple affair that sees you traversing each time period in order to find find items and to speak to various occupants of the world. What elevates the difficulty, however, is the inclusion of a timer, slowly counting down to your death that sticks with you across all of the time periods you visit. Add to this the need to acquire energy cells that the Z-pad requires in order to operate. The game quickly becomes a balancing act between the two. As you would imagine, due to the nature of the hardware, the visuals take a bit of a hit when compared to the original on the PlayStation 2, but in my opinion it does not detract from what is honestly one of the finest experiences on the PSP.